All right, hi, and welcome to For the Love of Fiber, why you should care about fiber for your whole health. I really wanted this to be a basic introduction for you guys about fiber because it is becoming more of a trend online. And as such, I set up this agenda for us. Going to introduce you to who I am, then into the basics that I think everyone should know. We're going to go a little bit beyond constipation and, of course, talk about the benefits of adequate fiber. At the end, though, I do want to come back to why fiber might not be enough, and then what my offer to you is if it, of course, isn't enough. So, for those of you who don't know, my name is Dr. Paige, and I am a naturopathic doctor practicing out of Hammonds Plains and Burnside, Nova Scotia. I have done a lot of external learning since I left school in 2022. And so, if you don't find me learning, you can probably find me with my nose in a book or spending time with friends and family, solving puzzles or cuddling with my dogs, cats, that kind of stuff. But that's not why you're here. You're here for fiber. And so I really want to talk about the fiber basics. And in order to do that, I thought we should start with the definition. So fiber is a plant material that cannot be digested, but that helps us to digest other food. Now, you might be thinking, we can't digest it. That can't be good. If we think about other things that can't be digested, like rocks, okay, not good, right? I do not recommend you eat rocks. But the idea is that if you eat a rock, you might get a little bit of calcium, maybe a little salt, depending on what the rock is, but it's going to come out whole. And it's really not going to help us digest other food, right? But fiber does. So because fiber is a plant material and it can't be digested, we do pass through our system, which is kind of cool because as a carbohydrate, it means it has 0 calories. So it's providing us benefit and it's not giving us any calories. But I guess how or why is it providing benefit? We're going to get to that in a little bit, but it does mean, at least from this context of things, that when we break it down in our mouth, it turns into a slurry in our stomach and we dump it into the intestines, our gut bacteria can eat, right? They eat, they feast, and they give us good things. And that's where it helps us digest other food, right? So, or it helps us function overall because our gut bacteria are given something to munch on, and it also helps us move things along. Now, I do want to say that there are many different types of fiber, and they all deserve hype for different reasons, but we don't need that to start, okay? We don't have to dive into the rabbit hole in order to get started. The two different types of fiber, or two main divisions of fiber, that help with digestion and whole health that I think are important are your very basic soluble and insoluble, okay? So our soluble fiber, it dissolves in water. If you were to grind this fiber up, put it in water, dissolve it up real nice, you might have, a little bit of a chalky drink, but there's not going to be massive chunks floating around. It dissolves really well. And the general rule of thumb here is that it helps firm up the loose and loosen up the firm. So in the context of bowel movements or constipation, we're looking to help add a little bit of looseness to a harder stool to make it easier to pass, and give a little bit more to a looser stool, again, to make it a bit easier to pass. Examples in this category can include oats, psyllium husk, bananas, and apples. Okay. On the flip side, we have insoluble fiber. It does not dissolve in water, so it's going to be chunky, going to float, sink, but we're not going to get this nice gel that forms like we do with soluble fiber. And the general rule here is that it helps bulk up and move along. So we're not really breaking it down. It's not forming a nice gel, but it's going to add to the bulk of our bowel movements and still provide our bacteria with stuff to munch on. And as it provides that bulk, it's going to help move things along. Examples here can be almonds, walnuts, kale, and the skins of apples and pears. Of course, with the example of apples, you can see that an apple has both soluble and insoluble fiber, which is the case for a lot of things. And it helps put into context that fiber is complicated, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. If we're looking just at these two little divisions, we're going to get both with most of the foods that we eat. Some foods tend to be skewed more one way than the other. But if we're trying to balance in between them, we should be able to do it from a fairly easy job. Okay. Now, we've talked about what fiber is. We talked about that it has 0 calories. We've talked about our gut bacteria loving it. We've talked about soluble, insoluble. And I want to take a moment to talk about the recommended daily intake before we move on. So right now, the recommended daily intake is somewhere between 22 to 34 grams daily, which can seem like a lot, especially if you don't know where your baseline is. So how much fiber do you eat right now? Do you know in grams? If not, then it might be a good idea to check and figure out if you are getting that 22 to 34. And I say that because a good chunk of people in North America aren't getting that. A good chunk are getting about half. Okay. So this is why fiber is important. We are missing it as a population, and we need to talk about that intake. But in order to figure out where you're at, in order to figure out where you need to go to, you probably need to figure out how much fiber is in something. Now, we could have sat down and gone through a table, looked at like this is much fibers in strawberries, this is how much fibers in carrots, but I didn't think that was a good use of our time. All right, I have a handout for you that breaks it down into a table form of some common food we see here in North America, and it's information that is readily available online. What I felt was more productive to our time was talking about reading nutrition labels so that we can better understand it. Okay. Would we love to live in an ideal world where nothing had a label or everything was really self evident? I mean, sure. But the truth of it is, we live in a society that has labels for safety. And part of that safety is what Health Canada mandates, here in Canada at least, what we can add on packaging as it comes to claims about fiber. So, in order for it to be a high fiber source, it has to have at least 4 grams or more per serving. An example of that would be a whole cup of green beans or one baked potato a skin. Okay. Now, a very high source has to be at least 6 grams or more, which would be a whole pear with the skin in, of course, or half a cup of chickpeas. Whether the chickpeas are ate whole in like a bean salad or curry, or they are smashed up into a hummus, it doesn't matter. Either way, you have to get that whole cup to get 6 grams. All right. Now, a source of fiber only has to be about 2 grams per serving. An example of that would be a whole cup of cherries or one whole wheat tortilla. Okay. Now, there are a lot of products out there that have fiber added to them to increase their fiber content. For instance, there are high fiber tortillas out there, tortilla wraps. And they're going to have maybe closer to 15 or 17 grams, but because there's more added into them. So as you can see, it can get complicated, right? And we have to be good at reading the nutrition label, but also the health claims and the ingredients. So for today, I just wanted to give you that breakdown of the nutrition labels so we understand how much fiber is actually potentially in a product if it has this claim on the package. Now, we set our intake goal with somewhere between 22 and 34. If we say it's 30 grams even, just for easy math in my head, you would have to eat 10 bananas a day because a banana is about 3 grams. Turnip is about also 3 grams per cup. It's a lot of bananas and a lot of turnip. Okay. So understanding where we get the nuance in the different amounts can make a big difference in increasing our intake beyond where we're actually at right now. Okay. We talked about how much fiber is in things. We talked about what it is. We talked a little bit about constipation, but I want to take it beyond constipation right now. And I want to talk about some of the other things that fiber can help. And I broke it down into 3 categories that are somewhat standalone, but also intertwined with each other. The first one is our metabolic category. So one of the first things that increasing your fiber or getting an adequate amount of fiber can do is help us get to appropriate hunger cues and increase our satiety. What I mean by that, or by increasing our satiety, is that it helps us feel fuller longer. So when we eat something with fiber, right, we mash it all up in our mouth, it goes to the stomach, and what happens is it actually releases the stomach contents a little bit slower into the intestines. Why is that important? Well, if we still have it hanging out in our stomach, okay, we're not as full, so we might eat a little bit less. But it also means, if we skip to the cardiovascular category here, we're also going to look at better blood sugar regulation. So because we are emptying slower from stomach into the intestines, we're not dumping all of the beautiful sugar and carbohydrates we ate directly into the intestines to be broken down and have a higher sugar spike. What we're doing is we're slowing it down, so we're using the same amount of fuel over a longer period of time. We're essentially making our digestive system a little bit more efficient. Okay. Now, I want to use the example here of a kid with candy. All right. So if you get a kid one candy, they're probably going to get a sugar high and go bouncing off the walls. But if you give a kid the same amount of sugar in the form of a fruit with its skin and all its lovely fiber, they're probably not going to ask for something as soon as if you just gave them one candy, because they're fuller for longer and their blood sugar is a little bit more even for a longer period of time. Okay, so that's kind of giving you a way to think about it. What both of those things, though, can help us with is stuff like weight maintenance and blood pressure control. So, if we're fuller for longer, we might not be eating as much. So, we have a natural reduction in calories. All right. Because again, fiber has no calories. We have a natural reduction in them, though, and that helps us maintain our weight a little bit better, partially because, good bowel movements and regular elimination, but also from the overall blood sugar regulation and also from the cholesterol elimination. We need fiber to be able to appropriately eliminate cholesterol. We can do so without it, but it just gives it a little bit of help. So if we're looking to help lower cholesterol values, right, this is going to help. Now, if we've now lowered weight, blood pressure, sugar levels, and cholesterol, you can see how we're really helping that overall cardiovascular risk with the use of fiber. If we switch back to the gastrointestinal tract for a moment, that's where we're getting the regulation of our beneficial gut bacteria. So like we said before, eating the fiber is going to give our bacteria something to munch on, and those bacteria then provide us with short-chain fatty acids and other nutrients that help us either from an energy perspective or better digest our other food. Both of which absolutely important, not just from a regulation of a bowel movement perspective, but also from a mental health perspective. If we switch to the mental health category for a second, we know that an adequate amount of fiber can help with anxiety and depression and fatigue. Do we fully understand why? Not really. And I think it's because there's so many factors at play. And that's really what the research says, right? If you think about a dog, okay, they have a bowel movement, and maybe it's a really good one, and they scratch the ground or they get the zoomies, right? They feel lighter, they feel good. And so we see that not only can regular bowel movements, but also regulation of our metabolic capacities like blood sugar give us that better kind of overall feeling. Not to mention, we're seeing an improvement in that brain gut connection. We know our brain talks to our gut, and our gut rather talks to our brain. And so as we're improving that relationship, we're slowing down the emptying, we're providing beneficial gut bacterial food, all of those good things. We're seeing an improvement in bloating and gas, which can bog us down mentally and emotionally. Not to mention, from a gut perspective, we're also reducing the risk of some GI concerns. If you have a higher fiber diet, you are less likely to end up with colon cancer or ulcerative colitis, Crohn's rather, or diverticulitis. So increasing fiber in the diet and having that adequate amount around can help us avoid some of those risks. Okay. Overall, these are pretty general, right? We're looking at cardiovascular system, we're looking at our mental health, we're looking at our metabolic health, looking at our gut health. But what can you expect to feel? And I wanted to break it down for you guys from a short-term to a long-term perspective. In the short term, we tend to see those metabolic effects first, okay? So we're seeing better bowel movement regulation, all right? We're seeing less bloating, less gas. We're seeing less hunger, and you're feeling better hydrated. So within the first few weeks of getting adequate fiber, you're probably going to feel these effects. Next come that mental health stuff, right? As the metabolic health starts to get underway, we start to feel less sluggish, more energized, a bit lighter, maybe an improved mood. Okay. So now we're feeling a little bit better both inside and outside from a mental emotional perspective. Some of the last things to change, though, are our lab values. So while adequate fiber is certainly important, it may take a while for those to be seen on lab work and to have those changes that we might be looking for. Things like improved cholesterol values or improved fasting glucose or HbA1c, so that long-term marker of sugar regulation that we look at in the context of diabetes. You're also going to likely have a decreased liver enzyme values and decreased inflammation markers. While those are fantastic, we need to have a kind of realistic expectation of timeline in mind for when we would expect those to change. Okay, so short term, the metabolic stuff, a little bit medium term, some of the mental health improvements, and then lab values over the long term. Now, maybe we want lab values to change. Maybe we are riding with a fairly high cholesterol value and we want to bring it down. Well, unfortunately, fiber alone is probably not going to be enough. And so I wanted to break it down for you guys in terms of 6 reasons why fiber might not be enough. So, number 1, you change absolutely nothing else and expect results in 3 days. That goes back to my previous slide. If we're looking to lower cholesterol values, we're not going to see that with 3 days of adequate fiber. All right. We need to have the long-term change of fiber plus likely other strategies to help bring it down. So, an understanding of your goal and an extending of the expectation of the timeline can help us better put into context why we need adequate fiber. Number 2 of why it may not be enough is that it's really easy to overdo it and go way too fast. All right. If, say, your baseline right now is 10 grams of fiber, and all of a sudden you start eating nothing but fiber and you end up with 70 grams in a day, you're likely going to feel bloated. You're probably going to feel really gassy and uncomfortable until your system gets used to it. Okay. So without that guidance and going a little bit slower, again, it's harder to put fiber into that context. Of course, number 3, if you have IBS or other conditions that need extra guidance, increasing fiber might make you feel a little bit worse. I talked about not all fiber being the same, and there's all kinds of differences. Things like IBS might have a little bit, let's call it an easier trigger when it comes to fiber. And so adding in fiber might not be enough to help bring those symptoms under control. Okay. Number 4, of course, is if you've tried this and you had no luck. Maybe you have tried increasing your fiber before, or you have increased it from where it was 3 years ago and you haven't seen a difference. This is where guidance comes in, right? Are we actually getting enough of it? How are we digesting it? Is there another condition that might be getting in the way? Are you consistent with it? All of those things. So while it is really important that you have the fire, and I'm really, really glad that you've tried before, having that guidance can bring kind of that extra oomph to the fiber. Reason number 5 I put down is you don't know where to start. So maybe what I went over is still going over your head. You still have no idea where you can find fiber sources. You don't know how to integrate it into your diet, any of those things. Then fiber alone isn't going to be enough, right? You need help to figure out where to go with the fiber. And that's totally okay, but it is a reason to consider. Number 6, my best reason, of course, is that you decide to jump into the deep end without guidance and you eat nothing but carrots until you turn orange. Yes, you can turn orange if you eat too many carrots. So I highly recommend the diversification, right? That's just an example of if you decide to eat nothing but bananas to hit your 30 grams or nothing but carrots to hit your 30 grams. We're not getting that variety. Okay, we're not getting the diversity that our gut, mental health, and also our liver needs in order to maintain what we're looking for. Okay, that might sound a little bit, a little bit down, a bit of a Debbie Downer saying, well, yay fiber, but then fiber might not be enough. And that's why it's where we come to what I offer to you. So along with this recording in the webinar, I offer a free handout, and the handout goes over figuring out fiber, right? Helping you understand where you're at, where you need to be, and what your favorite foods contain, what foods you want to try contain, and what kind of steps you're going to take to hit the adequate fiber amount that you're looking for. I'm also including, like I said, a table of, this is how much fiber is in some of those foods, so you can help understand for now where you're getting it. Now, the second handout I'm giving you is on snack plates or snack pick plates. If you've been in this office, you know that I absolutely love them. And I'm giving it in addition as a way of helping you conceptualize different ways of getting fiber in that might be a little bit different than how you think about it right now. All of them are higher fiber and moderate protein. So take a look at them and obviously mix and match. Like, use what feels good to you. That's the beauty about food, is you can be fairly versatile. There's not a lot of rigid rules, but I do give you some sample ideas just to get you started. Of course, because I am a naturopathic doctor and I do work with people one-on-one with this, I offer that accountability and personalized help. So like we said in the examples of why fiber might not be enough, you don't know where to start, or you need some help, or you've severely overdone it in the first 2 weeks and feel gross, right? Figuring out what the goals are for you, what the end goal is for you, and how we are going to get you eating more fiber in order to reach those goals is something that really requires a one-on-one conversation. And so those are kind of the 4 offers that I give to you through this, and hope that through not only this presentation, you've learned something, but it's also given you questions to think about, right? Is there something that you need clarity on? Did you come up with a burning question? Is there a typo, right? Ask away, because I just want to be able to give you information to get you started, and then be here to kind of cheerlead you along the way if you need it. Thank you again, though, for listening. And I hope that, like I said, you've learned something. And if not, feel free to reach out and I'll be more than happy to answer all of your fiber questions. Other than that, I hope you have a good day. Bye.